So today on the Late Late Lunch Show, I'm delighted to be speaking to Jed Carter, who's both a local councillor for Flixton at the Trafford Council, and also speaking today as a trustee of a charity that I didn't know about, but it's part of a very important charity scene called Little Green Sock. And here to talk about Little Green Sock and what they do is Jed Carter. Good afternoon, Jed. How are you?
Rod, good afternoon. I'm really, really well, thanks. And thanks for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure. Now, today you're talking to me as a trustee of Little Green Sock, which is a charity that I didn't know specifically about, but it's one of the many important charities that support in local communities. And in this area, it's about clothing. Tell us about Little Green Sock, Jed.
Oh, I certainly will. Yeah, so Little Green Sock Project, founded in Urmston within Trafford about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Um, we are colloquially known as a baby bank, and that means we provide essential goods to families in extreme need. And if we didn't meet that need, their children would go without both physical goods, but also the opportunities that those goods allow them to take advantage of. So we're not just clothing; we're everything to do with children from birth to 16, around clothing, footwear, toys and books, and particularly safety equipment. So think of things like safe bedding spaces, safe transportation systems, so mum and dad can get their kids out, or stair gate sort of safety stuff. So it's anything that children need that enables them to take full advantage of all the opportunities in front of them, whether that's going outside or having a safe place to live and sleep.
And can I ask you straight off the bat, I guess, why do you think in today's times there's still a need, or there's a growing need for organizations such as yours to provide what some people might see as very basic services, very basic needs around clothing and safety equipment, etc. Why do you think that in today's society, more and more people are relying on charity, whether it is for food or whether it is for clothing? What do you think's behind all that?
I think there's two elements to that. I think partly this sort of need has always existed, and it runs hand in hand with poverty, and it's just a bit more visible now than it perhaps was 50 years or 100 years ago. If you think back 100 years and the level of overcrowding and infant mortality or whatever, it was relatively commonplace. I think as societies has developed and moved on, there's a greater expectation that children shouldn't be in need, and a greater visibility of when children are in need. Having said that, there is a real crisis across the country in terms of poverty in families. And seek to make no political point about that, but simply to justify and explain why Little Green Sock Project and baby banks up and down the country exist a bit like food banks. So what we are finding is that now that the community knows that we exist, the demand for our services is going up and up. 2 years ago, Little Green Sock served on average, two families per day, 365 days a year. We're now serving four families per day, 365 years a year. That isn't because in the last 2 years demand has doubled. It's because in Trafford, more and more people are aware that there is help available through this incredible organisation called Little Green Sock Project, and more families in need are being referred to us. So whilst absolutely there is a significant challenge for many families driven by the cost of living, etc., which has been well rehearsed over the last 10, 15 years, Little Green Sock makes no judgment as to is that growing, is that declining. It simply says we will address this and we will not stand by and see children going without if we can possibly help it.
And I mean, I guess we all know how important clothing isn't just a necessity, because especially at children's ages, if you're not turning up in something that looks like other children, you could get bullied, you could be impacted in other ways. And therefore it has a big role in the confidence that a child experiences in their early years and beyond.
Absolutely. And quality clothing enables young people to fit in. Um, but even more basically than that, when hopefully we're coming out of the cold, wet winter season, but if you can't afford to buy a coat for your child, that stops them going out when it's cold and wet. If you can't afford to buy
Yeah.
them waterproof shoes, then they're going to have wet feet all the time. It's real basics like that. And then beyond the basics, if you want the child to do sport, well, it might need football boots or whatever equipment. If you simply can't stretch your family budget to meet those things, they miss out on all those opportunities, which puts them at a disadvantage generally amongst their peer group. So we're all about saying, yeah, we will kit families and children out with appropriate, seasonally appropriate clothing and footwear, and then all the other things that we'll probably talk about to make sure that not only can they fit in, but they can take advantage of the opportunities that other children just take for granted.
We'll take a break and we'll be back with Jed Carter talking today about a Trafford-based charity called Little Green Sock, and he's a trustee of that. He's also an elected member of Trafford Council, and we'll be talking more about this and also the organisations that are getting behind this, because there's a lot of big brands that are supporting this who obviously see the need as well. We'll take a break and we'll be back with him in a couple of minutes' time. You listen to Radio Voltage, Rod Maxwell, and today we're talking about the charity sector, which I know from my own experience, the charity sector has become extremely professional, Jed, actually, hasn't it? I mean, people now look at charity shops and they are merchandised like a professional shop. And the whole charity organization has increased its professionalism. Is that what you find?
It is. I guess I'm kind of a living example of that. I spent best part of 30 years in senior roles in retail marketing before moving into the charity sector for the last 10 years of my career. So I have run fundraising teams, regional local charities, charity retail chains, and the objective for forward-thinking charities is to look as effective and professional and trustworthy as the big brands want to present themselves as. So there's absolutely no regret or shame for charities trying to professionalize. It's about getting as many experienced and capable people as possible to think, yes, I could do my bit and join the sector, as well as thinking I could forge a career in the private or the public sector.
And what my experience from working at Headway was that in a shop you're doing everything from merchandising, your stock management, your pricing, you're doing your visual merchandising as well, and you're interacting with your customers. You're really a retail business all in one shop, because a lot of those things would have been done by head office for you, and it's a great place to learn if you're coming in to volunteer and build new skills.
Yeah, yeah. The whole charity retail field it's a beautiful work of business, and almost everybody working in it is a volunteer. Most charity shops have maybe one paid member and then a whole raft of brilliant volunteers. I can remember when we did a refit at a charity store that I was responsible for in Sheffield many years ago, and one of our objectives was we will have the best changing room in the whole of Sheffield City because we could use vintage drapes and vintage furniture as well as vintage clothing and a vintage mirror, all of which were items of the kind of thing that were on sale within the store. But to make a point about, you could go to a chain department store, you won't get a fitting room as fabulous as this because that's the love and the community focus that people in the sector bring in.
And I always felt like it's really important for the people who come in and need it to feel like they've got a professional retail offer, to not feel like it is charity. You're able to get things that are cheaper, but also they have quality behind them as well, because that's really quite important to your overall psychological feel, isn't it?
It is, and I think the whole charity retail sector is brilliant in terms of reuse and recycling, quality control, making items affordable that otherwise might not be. And I think Little Green Sock Project has learned from that. So we don't just say, give us any old tap that's no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
We're very, very explicit when appealing for donations for clothing, footwear, equipment, etc., to say they must be in um, great condition. We don't
Yeah.
want people receiving our bundles of stuff to think, oh, I've got something that's a bit raggy and a bit worn. We only distribute to our young people in need items that are absolutely superb condition. Yes, they've been pre-loved and pre-used, but only we won't accept them and redistribute them if they're in fabulous condition.
So in terms of the supporters, because it the charity sector is more professional. It takes a lot to keep going. And you have got some very impressive companies and organizations behind you, the likes of Forever Manchester, the Co-op, which is a major contributor and always has been to the community. AJ Bell Futures, for example, as well as Trafford Council, the Albert Trust, etc. How important is it to have these types of organizations working with you and supporting you?
It's fundamental. Our basic message is we know the community want us to do the work we're doing. And thankfully, the community understands that we're a charity, we don't receive any government funding. We can only continue to do the work we do and support 4 families every day in Trafford if people are generous in their support of us. So that could either be you as an individual, or it could be you as a group, a social group in Trafford, or it could be a company that does a lot of business in Trafford. And all of those kinds of support are absolutely invaluable to us. I mean, you cited AJ Bell as one of our supporters, as a corporate supporter. They've been absolutely fantastic with us. Not only did they make a commitment that's more than just 1 year, not a charity of the year project, but an ongoing project which is superb for any charity to partner with. But secondly, they've been generous in their support financially and also in their support of us in providing us with some free race places to their Great Manchester Run, which AJ Bell are the primary sponsor on. And I might come back to that a bit later in terms of how the community can get involved in supporting us as well.
And you were also saying to me earlier off air that actually the funding is coming from the community. It comes from voluntary donations, because again, to set up these organizations, whether it be the rents or whether it be the administration, the bureaucracy, etc., all of that costs. You may be reliant on volunteers, but there are certain costs. Why do you think people have responded, and how have they responded, Jed?
Well, I got involved with Little Green Soccer in November 2024 because the charity was facing an extinction event. They were trading out, or they were operating out of premises which were scheduled for demolition redevelopment, and we were given notice to quit. But to get a new premises of about 5,000 square feet on a commercial lease, we needed to demonstrate that we could pay the rent for at least 5 years. And as a very new charity, we didn't have that money in the bank. We had to set up a Save Our Baby Bank appeal to try and raise £200,000 in 5 months. Now, for an almost new charity, that is pretty much unheard of.
Yeah.
And I joined as part of that drive. And what we are delighted to say is because the community responded fully, effectively saying, we will not see the charity disappear. It's too important to allow that to happen. The community got together and helped us to raise £200,000 within 6 months, which has enabled us to take on a 5-year lease on the premises just behind Asda on Trafford Park. So we are there for at least 5 years. We've got our roots set in the community, supported by the community, and we've survived that threat to our existence. And that is because the community, both individuals and school groups and other support groups and some companies, stepped forward and said, yeah, we will put our hand in the pocket because we believe in this. We think Trafford would be a worse place without it.
Well, I have to say it seems to be an organisation that supports the community, that's funded and and if you like, foundations are in the community as well. I'll take another break, and I want to find out how people can interact with Little Green Sock. Where can they go to get support for their families, for their children? Today, I'm speaking to one of the trustees of Little Green Sock. It's Jed Carter, the elected member for Trafford Council for Flixton as well. We'll be back with Jed in a couple of minutes' time. You're listening to Radio Alti. It's Rod Maxwell on the Late Late Lunch Show, supported by our friends from Back to the Garden Childcare. And today we're talking about children. We're talking about an organisation, a voluntary organisation that supports them. It's called Little Green Sock Project, and specifically around clothing and other equipment that kids need. And we all know kids grow quickly. They have great demands. They go through clothing and they need gear. It can be tough out there for parents.
It absolutely can. I think one of the joys for us as a charity in that children grow up and they grow out of things quickly is quite often things haven't been worn until they're worn out. And
Yes.
what we say is if your child has enjoyed something and you've enjoyed seeing them in it or using it, then please pass it on to Little Green Sock Project. We will get it into the hands of kids that will otherwise go without.
Well, you know, Jed, this is the thing that strikes me that, every time I go out to the R4 GM site just outside of Altrincham, and they have a great site, shop there that sells goods that would have typically gone onto the waste, right? And you sort of think, what did we do with items before we had the charity sector, the very professional charity sector, to take them to donate? Because there are so many things these days that are worn very seldom. There, you can go to a charity shop and you're almost buying a brand new item. It's quite incredible. I don't know where all this stuff was going before the charity sector really professionalized or industrialized, if you like.
Yeah, I don't know myself, but I guess the message is to people, to your listeners, is if you have any children's clothing, footwear, yeah, prams, buggies, sleep systems, stair gates, anything that young children might need, then you can donate it to us if it's in good condition, and we will get it to families that are in need. To donate to us, you can look up, if you Google Little Green Sock Project, up we pop and look on how do I donate, and you'll get all the instructions there. Or I believe just recently, Asda in Altrincham have just opened a drop-off point, so you can drop off your pre-loved goods at the Asda in Altrincham as well, and they will get them to us.
That is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. So basically, you're going to your location in Stretford. Is that right?
The new location is just behind the Asda on Trafford Park.
Oh, okay. So that's and you go there and you go into a shop if you like, and there are the items on display. Is there any criteria for being able to shop there, Jed?
No, no, we're not a shop. We're a warehouse, so we receive the goods, check that they're in good condition, and then bundle them up into, say, 18-month to 24-month or 5 to 7 years, excuse me, and create bundles. And it'll be so in the winter it'll be warmer wear, summer it'll be cooler wear,
Right.
etc. And then you, as an individual, you couldn't come and say, "I need this stuff." You have to be referred. So most of our clients come through referrals from adult social care teams or children's social care teams who are dealing with families who may have some level of needs. There are also some referrers in some schools in Trafford that are taking referrals on behalf of disadvantaged parents. So only a professional referrer can access the goods.
Gotcha.
And they will give a description of the child or children that this family has and what their requirements are. And then Little Green Sock will pull together the bundle of goods, and the professional, the social worker, the school worker, whatever, will come and pick that bundle up and deliver it directly to the home of the family in need. So they don't need to go anywhere, they don't need to get out, but they're given a bundle that is bespoke to the needs that they've voiced and identified with their social worker or carer or school support worker.
And therefore, it's going direct to where the need is, and also makes it easier for them to be able to access it in a number of ways.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful extra benefit. What I find is quite a lot of people who have a lot of dealings with officials, whether it be council officials or DWP or whichever department of local or national government, sometimes can have a bit of a tricky relationship with them. And sometimes I can feel all I get is people telling me what to do and how I'm not doing enough or doing the things the right way. What we're finding from our social worker colleagues and supporters is that they're finding if they go to a family and say, look, if you need some things for your child, we can get them for you for free and we'll bring them to your doorstep for you. Suddenly, that's a way of them engaging in a positive, encouraging way that isn't seen as being perhaps critical or challenging. And once they do that, and then maybe in 6, 12 months' time, there's another requirement, and there's no need to ask, there's another a bundle provided to meet your children's needs. What our referring colleagues are telling us is that is helping them build constructive relationships with their client families. And that then opens the door to them to say, look, there's a play group around the corner. Would you be able to take your child to the play group? Or here's some additional support from an education point of view that you might not otherwise have been accessing. All of that sounds a bit complex and technical, but what we're getting from the people in the field, the feedback we're getting is these donations from people going to them to help their children with clothing, footwear, equipment are opening the door to a much better constructive relationship that's enabling them to access more health, social services, and education services than otherwise they might have done. So it's an extra benefit beyond the value of the goods themselves.
And the difference to a child who's getting that support, going into school, feeling a bit more confident, feeling better about what they're wearing, their further application in school, etc. What it does then is it gives them a proper foundation for their life.
Absolutely. And you bring it down to people. You hear stories of I've got 2 sons, only one of them can play football on Saturday because we've only got one set of football boots. That sort of thing. To the kids who getting football boots is not a problem. It wouldn't occur to them that they see people dropping out. All they see is that somebody's dropped out as opposed to for no fault of their own. There's a need that's not being met. So if we can provide the clothing, the footwear that enables kids to get out and do stuff and just live life and have fun and get involved and get up to mischief, then that's helping that family bring up children that are part of the community and don't feel that disadvantage and otherness.
And as one of the members of the organization, at your capacity as a trustee, you must get a sense of pride to see or to hear the stories that are coming from your supporters and your volunteers of the difference that it's making to people's lives.
Absolutely. I retired from working for charities a couple of years ago and spent my time looking for an organization that I could work for voluntarily that would really motivate me and I could see would make a real difference to people in my community. And I was quite selective, quite choosy. And when Catherine, the founder of Little Green Sock, got in touch and asked me could I possibly get involved, I went and interviewed her to see, look, how good a fit is this for me? Is this the kind of thing I'm looking for? And within 20 minutes, my goodness, I mean, she'd absolutely got me. The level of dynamism and commitment and vision and passion that was demonstrated by Catherine as the founder and all the volunteers around her and colleagues around her just made me want to get involved. And because you can see that direct correlation between we'll keep the place open, we'll raise the money to keep the wheels turning, and that means children in my community have a better chance of living healthily, with fun, with opportunity, and safely. That absolutely motivates me to get out of bed and do stuff at Little Green Sock.
Well, if you have been inspired by anything that we've talked about today on the website, maybe you can volunteer some time. Maybe you've got some clothing. Maybe you have a company that ends up with more kids' clothing than you know what to do with. You can get involved and go to littlegreensock.org referral-only.org. You can contact them through that. They're also on Facebook and Twitter, or I call it Twitter still, Facebook, X, and Instagram as well. Anything else, Jed, we should say?
Absolutely. I've got a special offer to all residents who fancy getting out in the trainers. The Great Manchester Run, end of May this year, is the best, biggest 10K in the UK. If you choose to run it for Little Green Sock Project, we will get you a free race place that's worth 50 quid. A load of people would love to do it, but haven't got the 50 quid to pay to run the race. If you'll commit to running it, raising at least £175 in sponsorship for us, we will get you a free race place. There's
Oh,
nobody for a deal like that. It's fantastic. Get it out to your Radio Alter listeners. You can access that through the website, littlegreentop.org. Do yourself a favour, run the Great Manchester 10K or half marathon, do it for free, raise us some cash.
there you go. You've heard the man. And I just got to say, go to the website. It's a lovely website. And I've just seen the impact over the last 12 months of this organization is that they've distributed somewhere around the region of £220,000 worth of items across nearly 1,300 bundles of items. And that means that it's going to directly to families in this area, helping them in a number of ways. It provides confidence. It provides essentials to them as well. And and as you say, there's a great offer if you fancy running is it the marathon or the 10K?
The Great Manchester Run, so it's a 10K and a half marathon. You pick your level of pain.
Right, I could see myself one time being able to do that. Not anymore. But Jed Carter, great to speak to you, and thank you for sharing that story with us. And good luck.
Thank you, Rob. Right.
Perfect.